My name is Lisa, and we're just going to get started. Yeah. Hello. Come in, there are plenty of seats in the back. Okay, so it's 2024. The new year is underway, and January happens to be National Get Organized Month. So the timing is absolutely perfect for tonight's guest. The presentation is Living with Serenity, a realistic approach to the KonMari Method. And our host for the program is Karin Socci. Karin trained under KonMari founder Marie Kondo. She is actually the first certified Master KonMari Consultant in the world. Karin is also certified Golden Circle member of the National Association of Professional Organizers. She is founder of the Serene Home, a business whose mission is bringing organization, productivity, well-being, and happiness to its clients. She is also a co-host of the Spark Joy podcast. Karin received her master's in social work from the University of Kansas and her MBA from Fordham University. We are so honored to have her join us tonight. Please welcome Karin Socci.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Lisa. Hi, wow, I can already tell this is a very lively group, so I'm very excited. Just a quick housekeeping thing. You will have questions. Please feel free to raise your hand at any point. If you want to save them to the end, that's fine. I will tell you an hour and a half goes really fast. So if you have a really burning question, rather than have you not get to ask it, feel free to jump in. Let me start with this. Who has some or all of their holiday decorations still up? Okay, all right. It's okay, you can be honest in here. Because I do. Who is here because someone else in their life is messier than they are and they're hoping that coming here will help them? Yeah. Who has older parents who are or need to downsize? Okay. Who are older parents who need or want to downsize? Okay, yeah. Okay. So all of these things are one of the reasons that people come try to get organized. One of the things that's happened in this industry over the last 10 years or so, because first of all, I had never heard of anything like a professional organizer. In 2014, I was moving from one little New York City apartment to another little one, and Marie Kondo's book had just come to the States. It was just first translated into English, got the book, read the book, decided to KonMari my stuff. We'll talk a little bit more about that. Does everyone know what KonMari is? Okay, let me just explain it really quickly. KonMari is nothing new under the sun. All of the techniques and ideas come from other places that have been used for years by professional organizers. Marie just kind of put them together in a neat little package that she felt was a really good way to look at this idea of trying to decide what should stay in your life. The approach that most professional organizers have made in history has focused on what you're getting rid of. How much can you get rid of? What don't you need? Marie wants us to focus more on what we've decided to keep as opposed to what we're getting rid of. So, for example, let's say that you are a collector. How many collectors are in here? How many people have collections of something? Okay, well, I come from a long line of collectors. I actually had an antique shop. My mother and my sister currently have an antique shop. I had an entire room in a house dedicated to Madame Alexander dolls. I'm currently trying to get rid of my mother-in-law's Barbie collection and Precious Moments collection. And the bad news is nobody wants any of this stuff anymore. This collecting thing that a lot of us went through in the 90s and 80s is over. So a lot of these things that people bought and pay a lot of money for, they're finding out that they're just not worth anything anymore. So it's really hard. So a lot of people come to this like really confused about where to get started, how to get rid of things in a responsible way so that you don't feel like you're just throwing stuff away and maybe somebody in the world would want these things, but you're not sure where to start. So KonMari is an approach to take a look at how we can think about organizing in a way that's simpler, more straightforward, and doesn't make you feel bad. How many people walk in the door at the end of the day, wake up in the morning, and the first thing they think of is everything's a mess in here. And if I could only get everything straightened out, my life would be simpler, I would be happier, I would have less stress, right? That's one of the reasons that a lot of people think organizing can help them achieve some of their other goals in life, right? So if you're not feeling harried and nervous and worried about the stuff in your house, if you're not feeling like you're constantly looking for things, if you feel like you're not constantly buying things that you already have that you can't keep track of, life is simpler. So we're going to talk a lot about that idea. Okay, so thing. So how does everything get so messy? How do you think you have gotten to have what you would consider to be a disorganized home? What's happened in your life? Uh-huh.
I collect paper.
Okay,
And
you're going to talk about
receipts,
paper.
bills, whatever it is.
Okay,
Forever.
okay. So you have a hard time letting go of paper.
Yep.
Okay. One of the things about making decisions is that when we decide to keep something, we have made a decision. Sometimes we made a decision to not make a decision. I don't know what to do with this right now, so I'm just going to put it here in this little stack. Paper is great for that, or bad for that, however you want to look at it. Then you have one piece of paper you put in a stack, then you have another piece of paper, and before you know it, you have a map, and you don't know what's in it. But you do know that you have to make some decisions.
Oh, mine is very organized.
Well,
Very organized.
and that's the one thing too, is that I really want to move away from this idea that you should feel bad about being disorganized, because there's a lot of really famous people who are way disorganized, and they achieve a lot of things. That's the other thing that's really important to me, is that almost every one of my clients is majorly accomplished in other areas of their life, right? So they may consider themselves messy. Let me get a quick drink. Just getting over a cold. They may consider themselves messy, but they are professionally very advanced, or they are very accomplished in other areas. But when it comes to keeping their home organized or their people organized, they feel really out of control. Any other ideas about how things get so messy?
Having kids.
Yes, okay. That's a good, so how many people in here have gone through a major transition in your life in the last couple of years? Like, your kids have left home, or you have new kids. You've moved from one place to another, you've had a major job change. You know, outside of the major change that we all went through during the pandemic. So a lot of times when people are going through a big life change, they find that they really need to start taking a look at the stuff in their house. How many people are holding on to their kids' things, their adult children's things, because you think your grandkids might want that stuff one day? Right? Even though your kids have said over and over again, they're not gonna want that. Okay, a very common thing. How many people have inherited things from your parents or your grandparents? Right, so I have families who sometimes have 2 dining room sets because they, multiple sets of dishes. Silver that is never gonna get polished, right? Because they feel bad, it's like part of the family. One of the things KonMari will do will help you kind of discern what's really important to you and what's not. So that doesn't mean that you get rid of all your kids' toys. Because when they're adult and they have their kids, they really may want some of that stuff, but they're not gonna want all of it, right? If everything's important, nothing's important. So learning how to say, okay, this item represents where my kid was at this point in their life. They wrote this little essay when they were in 4th grade, and it was just to capture their personality perfectly. That's the one you keep. You don't keep every piece of paper that comes home with them. You know, learning how to get organized is one of the things that will help you do that. Okay, so agenda, what is the KonMari method? I'll go through the basics and nuts and bolts, how to use it to create serenity. In other words, making this work for you. So I will give you some guidelines that I feel work for most people. But again, this is a do-it-yourself project. It has to work for you. If I say I want you to block off 3 hours of time, and it's gonna be impossible for you to put 3 hours of time together, then you do an hour at a time, okay? So we're gonna make this work for you. And then, of course, hopefully we'll get to your questions. Okay, the KonMari method basically has these major concepts. First of all, I want to point out this saying from William Morris. Does anybody know who William Morris was? He was a famous interior designer from the early 1900s, and he wrote like the books on interior design. He was like New York interior design royalty of the time. And he said, have nothing in your house that you do not know to be useful or believe to be beautiful. So that doesn't mean that you get rid of everything that doesn't have some use, but it does mean that it has to be beautiful to you, like, or useful. So if you have 4 garlic presses, and one of them works, but you've got the other 3 for backups, right? That's not a good use of space, right? You're never going to need those garlic presses that don't work well. So you use the things that work well and you get rid of the other things. Okay, sort by category, not location. So what we mean by that is that a lot of professional organizers will say, let's do the kitchen first, all right? Or let's do the basement, or let's do the garage. So there's nothing wrong with that. But KonMari says, let's take a look at the sum total of all of the items in a particular category. So we're going to look at all of your sweaters, even the ones that you got in storage, the ones that you left in your car, the ones in the back of your chair at the office. We're going to think about all of your sweaters as a group, right? We're going to think about all of your paper by category. Here are bills. We'll talk a lot about the bills. Here are documents I need to keep. So we look at things in categories instead of by location. Sort and discard before you organize, right? So what that says basically is that we edit before we discard. I really like the word edit much more than I like words like purge or, declutter. There's nothing wrong with those words, but I think it's more useful to think about you editing the things in your life. Again, going back to this idea that you want to keep the things that are important to you. But we have to do that first. So instead of thinking about where things should go or going to the Container Store and spending $1,000 on bins, the Container Store is Disneyland for disorganized people. It's guilty, right? You go in there and you find things that you never knew you needed. But it's just a thing. You'll just make everything organized, right? But a lot of people will do that. They'll go buy all the stuff, shove everything in a bin, and then that's it, right? So in KonMari, we do it the other way around. We want you to get everything edited, even if it means things are messy for a little bit. Keep only the things that you know you love or need. Oh, and I chopped off my E there. Those things spark joy. And then we're going to organize so that everything has a permanent home and it stays where you use it. In other words, there's no point doing all this hard work if everything's going to get messy again. How many people have cleaned their closet, looked beautiful, got everything organized, and 6 months later it was a mess again, or the kitchen was a mess again? So that is one of the things we want to avoid. Okay, so the simple formula, the things you need to remember. Sort and edit first. We're going to talk a little bit more about how to do that. Organize next and maintain after. And that's paper, everything else. Okay, so let's talk about what the categories are. And there's actually a reason they're in this order. But I'm also going to tell you the work around some of this stuff. Because I don't want these categories to cause you to not get started. So if there is a category that you feel you absolutely must organize first, or there's no point in doing this, then that's okay. So if you decide that you don't want to do clothing, but the paper is out of control, and you have to do the paper first. Maybe you have something coming up like that. You need to get your papers in order. For an older family member, you're getting your documents in order. If that's what you need to do first, that's okay. It doesn't have to be in this order. This order tends to work in a general way because you, throughout this entire process, are learning how to make these decisions for yourself. Kind of going back to this idea of maintaining it. Once you've gone through this whole process, you have to continue deciding, because nothing's static, right? You get your whole home organized, stuff comes in, stuff goes out. The sweater that you loved one year is threadbare, ready to go the next year, right? So, and you get new sweaters, so you have to learn how to make those decisions on an ongoing basis. So this is a way to train your thinking in the terms of what do I want to keep, what do I want to let go of. Clothing. The reason clothing is first is, first of all, it tends to be something that people really do have a lot of trouble with. It tends to be one of those things that if your closet is neat and tidy, if when you get ready in the morning, you open up your closet and you could wear anything in that closet. You don't have jeans that span 5 sizes. You don't have a closet full of things that if you only lost 10 pounds you could get into. Your closet should make you feel good. And if that means you get rid of things that don't fit, you put them away until that day that you can fit into them, then that's okay. But nothing in your closet should be not perfect for you. So in other words, if you open up your closet for the workday and you have a choice between 5 blouses, you feel perfectly confident that any one of those blouses would be fine and ready to go, and that's why it's in your closet. So clothing is one of those things that we make decisions about every day. And we pretty much know what feels good. We pretty much know or have a good idea what color looks good on us. We have a pretty good idea of what we need, how many work outfits do we need? Do we need any? How many, going to the gym outfits do we need? So we have a much better idea of kind of what you need in the realm of clothing. That's why it's first. Books are next. Books are another thing that people either, how many people have a lot of books? Okay. How many people have read all the books that they have? Or most of them? Like you buy books, you read them, and you keep them. Okay. All right. So books are next, right? And when we do books, again, we're going into categories. So some people have one shelf of books, right? All my books are digital these days, so I have like one shelf of books. So I'm going to look at that as a group. Some people have a kitchen full of cookbooks that they never use because you always look stuff up online now. Some people then have tons of how-to books, right? Maybe you have a hobby. Maybe you knit or you sew or you repair cars, and so you have a whole bunch of those books. Then you might have a lot of novels, and you might have a lot of kids' books. You might have little kids or grandkids, and there's tons of books for them. So we divide books up by categories. So the kid books we're going to look at all together. The cookbooks you're going to take a really good hard look at, and you're going to decide if you're ever going to use those. But it's okay if you have cookbooks that have beautiful pictures in them, and you just love looking at the pictures. But it's okay to say I'm never going to use these recipes, but I like to look at the pictures. That's perfectly valid. Paper. So we'll go. Paper is an important category, and to me, it doesn't just involve pieces of paper. It also involves content. So email. All right. So we could do 10 hours on just paper. So we'll kind of cover the surface of it. And I do have an exercise for us to try. Kimono. Kimono means miscellaneous. Now, the reason that category seems huge is because everybody has different miscellaneous stuff. So if you are a chef, right, your kitchen is going to look a lot different than some single person in their first apartment in Manhattan. If you are a sports fanatic, let's say you play a lot of sports, you're going to have a lot of sporting equipment. If you're a collector, you're going to have your collection, right? If you have kids, you're going to have kids stuff. So that category is really big because no one's really the same as far as like what they have. You might have tons of toiletries. There's just all different kinds of things that we look at in that group. And then the last category is sentimental and mementos. If you do nothing else, it is best to do this category at the end. This is the hardest category. And you can already can tell with the way that you struggled before you got here with what to keep and what to let go of. Sentimental and mementos can also be in any other category. How many people have a sentimental sweatshirt from college? Or their wedding dress in a box? Or their wedding, right? Or their kids' baby clothes. Okay, so clothing, but it's sentimental. So it's not really clothing anymore, it's a memory, right? So books can always be very sentimental. So if you have your kids' books, right, it's harder to let those go when you remember reading those stories to them at night. You might have books that you just love. And again, we're not going to be talking about what you're getting rid of. We're just thinking about what's important to you right now. Paper, a lot of times what I find is that people will have a huge stack of papers. There will be bills, there will be their passport, there will be the new photos from their and nieces and nephews. There will be a birthday card. There'll be more bills. So how do you even begin with that, right? So if you take out all the stuff that's the photographs, the birthday cards, the tickets from your trip to Vienna last year, those things, they're not even paper anymore. They're memories, right? They're kind of documents of things you've experienced. And there's an emotional attachment to them. You're not going to think about those the same way you're thinking about your American Express bill, right? So you can't make decisions about them at the same time. And miscellaneous, people who have inherited a lot of their grandparents or great-grandparents' furniture, it's not furniture anymore. It's like it's your family history, right? So there's any category can have things that are sentimental. Okay, so we are going to talk about paper just because it's so hard. And the first thing I'm going to do is give you a handout. There's 3 categories. Every single document will fall into 3 categories. And I want you to challenge me on that because there may be some exceptions. If we run out of copies, if you can't get any, then I will make sure to send them out. I can email things out to you also. Are we short a lot? Okay. Well, if for right now, maybe you can share it, then I'll make sure to get it out to you in email. You should want it in email anyway, right? Because you don't really use a paper copy, you have it on email. We will talk a lot about, and what I want to say about digital stuff is, do not let anybody talk you into doing something you don't feel comfortable with, okay? If somebody tells you to pay all your bills online, and you feel comfortable doing that, great. One of the things you can do is you can say, I want to see a paper copy of everything that I'm paying because I need to be able to see it in order to, feel confident. Then that's fine. That doesn't mean you need to keep that bill forever. If you can find that bill somewhere else, like online, then why do you need a paper copy of it? But if you don't feel comfortable accessing it that way, then don't let anybody talk you into it. If somebody tells you, you should be taking photos of this and putting it into Dropbox and, your email, you should have inbox 0. You shouldn't save anything. You shouldn't print anything out. Then, no. You do what feels comfortable for you. If that changes over time, fine. But I think a lot of people are really getting into this idea that they should be doing something different than what feels comfortable to them. If you leave here and you decide to keep every single thing in your house, that's fine, because you made that conscious decision to do that. Okay, so if you get rid of everything, that's fine. When I did KonMari, I got rid of 3/4 of everything I own, and I haven't missed one single thing. But on the other hand, I work with people who didn't get rid of very much, and they're just as happy with their home or their project as I was. Okay, so 3 categories of paper. Now, this excludes sentimental paper. Remember, we've already decided we're looking at that last. Okay, so photos, birthday cards, report cards, the kids' homework, all that stuff we're looking at differently. There are forever documents. Forever documents are things that, if you lost it, or if it was destroyed, it would be hard or impossible to replace. So that's your passport. That's birth certificates, marriage certificates. If it's something that is important information, and the information is unlikely to change over time, then that's a forever document. That might be something like an insurance policy for the house, right? I mean, that may change someday, but for right now, you've got that number and that's your number. So those are things that you're gonna keep forever. You're gonna keep those separately from everything else, okay? Those are the papers that you wanna keep in your safe deposit box or have duplicates of, or you do take a photo of your passport and you put it in a file so that if you lose your passport, it makes it a lot easier to get it again. But you keep those documents forever, or at least until you have to get a new passport. Questions about that? Okay. The next one is intermediate items. And this means items that you're keeping for a set amount of time, but not forever. So that might be a wedding invitation. Okay, so you're getting invited to a wedding that happens in June. You decided that you're going to go. There's printed directions and a lot of information on the invitation. And so you're going to keep it until June. You're going to keep it. It's got the information about the registry, all that kind of stuff, the hotel, all that. So you're keeping that invitation until June, and then you don't need to keep it anymore, right? Unless it's a sentimental item, then we're going to think about that differently. If it's your kid's wedding, obviously you're not just going to toss the invitation. If it's, your second cousin, twice removed kid, then maybe that invitation is not as important to you. But you're going to keep that just as long as you need to have it in order to complete whatever that document is asking you to do. Documents have actions associated with them. So a bill, right? The bill says, I'm here for you to look at, make sure everything looks good here. You're going to make a decision about whether to pay me or not. You're going to make a decision about calling somebody, finding out what this charge is all about. And then once you've completed that decision-making process, you can let me go. Right? Now you may choose not to, but you can. That action has been completed. Let's say it is something, you are part of a team and you're planning a bake sale at the school. And each person on that 4-person team has been assigned a task. All right, so your task is to create all the signage at the school. Someone else is deciding and finding out where the room is going to be that you're going to be holding the bake sale. Who's the sponsor? Who's sponsoring it? What time it'll be? Are there any special instructions that people need to see on the signs? All that stuff. So you're waiting. Your project is to make the sign. You're waiting on someone else to get you the information you need to make those signs. Right? So that project is on hold. You are hanging on to that project. You're going to keep that project until you've completed your part. Now, let's say there's a lot of paper involved with that, or a bunch of emails. You can then decide, I can let go of those emails because I'm done, right? There's a lot of things that fall into an intermediate pile. It's the newspaper, right? So you didn't get to read the paper this morning, but you're going to read it tonight. Now, the one thing I'll say is that if you have a newspaper that's more than 2 days old, you're not going to read it. You're just not. I mean, sometimes there's an article that you're saving, or it's like there's a story in the magazine or something. But for most people, once news is old, it's old. So if you're not reading the newspaper, it's okay. It's okay to let it go. Most people also don't read, if you have a periodical that's more than 2 months old, a monthly that's 2 months old, probably not going to read it. You might look through it briefly, but how many people have stacks of magazines that they hope they get to read one day? Or there's a pattern or something in a magazine and you're keeping the whole stack. And then there's action items. So action items are those things that you're not waiting on anyone. You're not waiting on a date to pass, like that wedding invitation. You're not waiting on information from the phone company to find out why your bill's so high. You can actually take care of that item right now. So that stack is basically your to-do stack. You have a phone call you need to return. You have an email you need to respond to. And you can do that right now. You're not waiting on anything. That is your action item. Questions about that? So now we're going to talk about how do you make that decision about what's what. Okay. In KonMari, we say, what purpose is this piece of paper for? What am I keeping it for? I'm keeping this piece. If you can answer that question without maybe someday I will need this. If you can say, I need to make this phone call, I need to hold on to this for taxes, I need to ask my significant other a question about this thing. If there is something that you can say, I need to do with this specifically, then that is something that you keep, at least for the time being. And again, it'll fall into this category. I'm not waiting on anybody, so I can take care of this right now, or I have to wait until certain things happen, or a date passes, and then I can take care of it. So that's one thing you're going to think about when you think about paper. Am I holding on to this because I may need it one day, right? It's not a good reason for keeping things. If you can say, I may need this one day, Right now, I don't think I do, but who knows, right? Something might come up. But I could get this online if I needed to. If it is available in a different format, let's say it's a bank statement from 3 years ago and you discovered it, you really didn't need that to justify something that the tax people are asking you about, whatever. You can go to the bank and get that bank statement if you had to. All right, so again, we're gonna go back to this idea of how difficult would it be to replace that document, right? So if it's something that would be really difficult to replace, then you're gonna give that a little more thought than it's my MX bill and it's online anyway. All right, so that's how you're gonna think about that. But the first step, remember, is you're dividing it into what is the action that this item is asking me to do. Okay, so we're gonna talk about, actually, we're gonna do this because now that I've given you an idea of different categories of paper, I'm gonna ask you whether or not you think these items fall into a particular category and what category that is. So let's see. Okay, income tax forms from 2017. Is that something you need to keep?
Yes.
Okay, now, yeah, so basically what do they say, 10 years? And your mileage may be different depending on what your account wants you to do. A lot of times, all of this is online anyway, and the only thing you really need to keep might be the receipts, the original receipts. If you have taxes from 2007, okay, you don't need to keep all of them. But that doesn't mean that you can't digitize them, you can't make sure that they're available somewhere else, all right? That's perfectly okay. You never know. But a lot of people have tax returns, forever, and there's just no reason to keep all that. But again, if you want to, you keep them. There's no, how many people have seen pictures of Marie Kondo in her house? Okay. She has so much help and make it look like that. and it doesn't look like that, except when the cameras are there. That is like she's a minimalist person. She doesn't have a lot of things around her. That's kind of her personality. But that's not me. I'm a collector. I collect little tiny groups of things, and instead of needing 100 of something, I'm very happy with 3 perfect ones. All right, but I'm just always gonna have stuff around me that's completely pointless and useless to everybody but me, right? And that's okay. So I think it's really important that if you decide you want to keep all your taxes forever, then that's perfectly fine. Maybe when you're in the retirement home, you'll have a lot of fun looking back to see what you got paid when you were 17. Whatever works, right? Okay. A letter from a charity that you want to send a donation to, but you just haven't gotten around to it yet.
Action.
Yeah, so that's an action, right? So there's nothing you really need to do. You just haven't got to it. So definitely an action item. Okay, here we go. A Valentine your kindergarten child made you.
Forever.
So then you have to decide. Did your kid just take a bunch of stickers from a Valentine's book and put them on a piece of paper and hand that to you? Or did he cut out a big heart and then another heart and you went to all this trouble to put a sweet little saying? Obviously that's the way to keep, right? But you can't keep everything. And are there teachers in here? So I have a lot of teachers in my family and they tell me all the time, we give kids stuff to do because we need a break. But the parents want to see everything their kid is doing. So when the kid is kept, scribble for 5 minutes, let's see what you came up with, whatever it might be, so that the teacher can catch her breath. She still sent that home, right? And it was just busy work, so you don't need to keep all that stuff. Okay. A thank you note from your cousin for a gift you gave last May. Okay. All right. So when it comes to cards, okay, if the card is Love Aunt Mary, you don't need to keep that card. If it's a long, heartfelt, your mom wrote about how proud she is of you or whatever, then obviously that's something you keep. So again, you're looking at them at the end of the holidays, you've all got a stack of cards, right? So now you say, all right, here are the pictures of my little nieces and nephews. We're gonna keep that one. But here are the picture card from, my neighbor from 3 houses ago. You don't need to keep that forever. So you just kind of make those decisions as you go. Okay. So here are kind of some basics in KonMari decision making. Remember how we talked about earlier about categories? Remove everything from its space. Okay. This is the ideal, and then I'm going to tell you the reality. So in KonMari, you are supposed to take every article of clothing you have and make an enormous pile. And it doesn't matter, it can be a mountain on top of your bed and start that way. The first thing you do is take every article of clothing. You go through the basement, the laundry room, the car, the back bedroom closet, then you take every article of clothing you own and you make an enormous mountain. If you have so few clothes that you can do that, great. Most people, you don't want to do that. You don't want to make such a mess that it's overwhelming. You don't want to feel that if I get started, I'm not going to finish, so I'm not going to start. Okay? So you take your t-shirts, right? You take only your t-shirts. T-shirts are good because you can kind of tell. I've got 5 white t-shirts and 3 of them are really yellow, and I only wear 1 of them, right? So you can get rid of 4 t-shirts. It's a little easier to start that way. Then go to sweaters, then go to jeans, then go to your work outfits. So after the pandemic, a lot of us, our work situation changed. Even if we went back to the work environment, a lot of times things were more casual than they used to be. So a lot of the clothes that we're hanging on to, and I don't think we're going to be wearing, business suits again. So, hanging on to things that likely we're not going to use again, it's probably not necessary. Sweaters, and we were just talking about the climate. I have sweaters and I haven't worn for 3 years because they're not getting cold enough for a long enough period of time. So then I have to make a decision. Do I keep all of them? Or do I think, the other thing too is that times change and your taste will change. So the clothes that you're hanging on to now, because you might want to wear them someday, keep in mind that you're going to look at them again and you might be like, what was I thinking? Why did I buy that chartreuse neon green sweater? And a lot of times the answer is because it was on sale. Or I just needed to buy something because I was having a bad day. But I'll tell you the important thing about that sweater, the reason it's okay to let go of it, instead of thinking I wasted $40 on the sweater that I'm never going to wear, so therefore I'm a horrible person, think I just learned that neon yellow doesn't look good on me. So it was worth that $40 because you're never going to make that mistake again. All right, so that's a better way of looking at it. Okay, instead of removing everything from its space, you can remove all the t-shirts. But the idea is that you're looking at everything as a category. Keep only the things that you love or that perform or function well. Sometimes you may find that you end up buying things that you thought you had, and then you discovered that either you didn't have it or it didn't work very well. So like those garlic presses, if you have 4 garlic presses and none of them work, then you can put all of them and you go buy yourself a garlic press. All right, so this is about treating yourself well and saying, I am worthy of having things that work. All right, but that doesn't mean you keep all 4 of the ones that don't work and you get a new one. All right, you gotta get rid of the 4 first. Don't get sidetracked by a decision. This is why I think people really get tripped up. They feel like they have to decide right now. They're holding an item, And I've had clients who've just been frozen with trying to make a decision about something, And I'm just like, you could have bought this 10 times over for the amount of time that you've had to pay me for standing and watching you do this. So, think about that. If you can't decide, put it aside. I promise you, a lot of times when people start with clothing, they have a yes pile, a no pile, and a maybe pile. And the maybe pile is usually huge, especially at first. That pile of stuff that you want to try on, you want to see what else you have, you can't decide, a lot of different things. A lot of times you need to try it on, right? By the time you go back to the maybe pile, you will find that most of the maybe pile you don't like. There was a reason it was in the maybe pile. But you have to go through that process, and it's okay. Be mindful, what is the future use of this item? There's probably 2 mottos that I want you to take away from us today, or from our meeting tonight. The first one is, what is the future use of this item? Now, what does that mean? Maybe someday is the death of good organization. If you're keeping things because you may need them someday, those are things that are clutter in your life, okay? If you can think, I know that I'll be doing something with this someday, that is something, or I do something with this every day, then that's a reason to keep something. But if it's a maybe someday thing, or maybe someday we'll need this, how many people have, I think that might be, oh yeah, so we're gonna talk about a slide about my example of this within my own house. But what is the future use of this item? Now, does anybody know what this picture is? What? Yeah, it's Einstein's desk, okay. So was he messy? Yeah. He also was very accomplished in other areas of his life, and he couldn't have, this was his preference, and he didn't beat himself up about this, right? A lot of times we feel that somehow we're doing something wrong if our outside look one way, we feel like that's what our insides are now, right? So if you feel like they've got a messy, what is it, messy room, messy mind, or whatever. But that's, you have to use what works. I do a lot, because I'm a social worker, a lot of my clients have ADHD, for example. And the people who have ADHD fall into two categories, but this is very general, okay? They either need to be able to see everything, or they forget it exists, right? So all of their projects need to be out, all of their to-dos need to be in front of them. They need to be able to see all the stuff in their kitchen cabinets. That's one type of person. And then the other type is the kind of person is they have anything in view except what they're working on. They can't function. So if there's any what we call visual clutter, then they're not able to function. Both of those extremes are just the way it is, right? And neither one of them is wrong, and neither one of them means that person is more successful or a better person or more organized, or even more organized, because I met the stuff that he knew what everything was on this desk. But then he knew every piece of paper. He could find anything, well, maybe not. But a lot of people can do that. All right, so now I'm going to tell you a story about. So earlier I told you about, let's see, we'll go back here. A lot of people raised their hand when they were talking about having someone, when I asked about having someone in your life that you feel is messier than you. So what Marie says is that you can't organize for anybody else, right? You can't organize, not that you can't. It's not appropriate in Marie Kondo world to organize other people's things, right? So learning some new strategies for how to approach that person in your life by either I'm going to hound them, or I'm not going to hound them, or I'm going to make an ultimatum, or try to set boundaries. A lot of times those things don't work nearly as well as getting your own stuff organized. Time and time again, when I'm working with one person in a couple, and the person that I'm working with will get their things organized, the other person sees that this is like a really good thing, and they start taking a look at their own stuff. So the best thing that you can do if you want to set an example is just get your own stuff organized first, right? That does not mean that you cannot say, when it comes to common areas, these are the things that I expect, right? That common areas should be neat and tidy and useful for everybody in the family. So it's okay, your college-age son, if you want to have your room gear up, that's fine, until you decide you want to do something differently. But when it comes to the dining room table, flat surfaces should be used for activities only. Flat surfaces should not be used for storage. That means your dining room table, your kitchen counters, those surfaces are for eating on, preparing food, not stacking papers or stacking, stuff you don't know what to do with, or the fact that you bought 2 cases of something from Amazon accidentally, so they're just going to sit on the cabinet. Keep in mind that we'll talk about this in a minute, that space is really valuable, and I don't care how big your home is, every bit of space that you own or that you're paying rent for is expensive. So if you have stuff that you're not using, taking up space, then it's really just wasting money, right? So if you have a bunch of appliances on your kitchen counter that are taking up valuable real estate, and you're not able to comfortably cook because you have these appliances, then you want to ask yourself, is this worth the amount of space it's taking up? Okay, so I got myself organized, got married. My husband, he's actually forgot, I don't know, I shouldn't say forgot. For somebody who really is kind of messy, he does a pretty good job of keeping things at home that are organized. His office looks like Einstein's, but at home he's pretty okay. One big exception was that he had two big, huge bins of cords and chargers and dongles under the bed. And they were a mess. And he never used anything. How many people have a box of cords? Somebody is going to need that Galaxy One phone charger, and you're just going to save the day because you have it, right? So I never said a word about this, right? Because it was under the bed, it didn't bother me, it was no big deal, right? And for the most part, he's relatively, the common area thing, we're very neat and tidy when it comes to common areas. So one day I came home from working with a client, and I see this. He has gone through all of these bins. I wish I would have taken a picture. He already had like a huge trash bag ready to go to electronic recycling. And he had put things in categories so that he could decide what to keep or not. Now he did this like years after I was an organizer for years before he did this. But it was just finally he decided today was the day. So after two huge, you know those big bins that you slide under the bed? He had two of those crammed full, like you had to practically sit on them to get at the clothes, right? This is what he ended up with after he took a good hard look at everything he had. That's what he ended up with. Right? And see this is my little battery organizer. If you do nothing else, go on Amazon and look for little battery organizers. Instead of having the cardboard, this will make you feel so good. They're not very expensive. You can get all these little containers for different size batteries. If you use a lot of batteries, and then you just put them in a side of a big box and it becomes your battery box and just looks so neat and tidy. Okay, so in other words, the whole idea of working with family, your kids, your parents, or your spouse, is the more you're able to show, you're just setting a good example, right? But you will feel better if your stuff is organized. And you'll feel okay about setting a boundary, like the car can't be our car that we share, we both have to take care of, right? That's an important thing for you to be able to do, right? And if you feel that you're taking care of your part, your side of the street is clean, then you can ask that, right? And if your significant other can't keep the car clean because it's just not in their nature, then come up with a solution. All right, you can't keep the car clean, it's just not something that you're good at. So once a week, you agree that you'll take the car to the car wash and we'll let the guys clean it out. So this, you can work around things like that. Okay, how are we doing on time? What questions do you have so far? I'm talking about families and.
So I'd seen something in the New York Times a while ago, and it listed like, I don't know, 5 things that were anachronisms, including things like filing cabinets and bookcases. And is it like, I mean, not that I'm asking for permission, but dealing with paper instead of doing things digitally, is that still a viable way to live, or is that just?
How do you say that again?
Well, like I tend to do things on paper.
Sure.
And I'm continuing to do that, but I'm just curious if you think that's a viable way to live these days, or if you really.
Well, let me ask you,
anymore.
do you feel that you're missing? Do you feel that you're missing out on something by not being more, you mean as opposed to having things more virtual?
Right, like, no, I just have a lot of paper.
Okay.
And,
okay.
I realize if I did it digitally, I would have less paper.
Right.
But I just prefer working that way.
Okay.
Or books, hard copy books, reading those as opposed to reading things online.
Right.
But,
well, I mean, to me, you should do what makes you feel good, right? And like I said, if it would have made me feel good to keep that bedroom full of dolls, I would have done it, right? If it makes you feel good to keep paper forever, then that's fine. Now, if you feel that you're missing out on something, or that you're not able to accomplish something that you'd like to, because your stuff isn't digital and you can't find it, and you want to put it in folders to find things more easily, if you can find what you need, and you're able to accomplish the task that you want to accomplish, then you like your paper, you like your hardback books, and there's nothing wrong with that at all.
And if you want to allocate a lot of your space to filing cabinets, so.
Yeah, I mean, again, if the amount of stuff that's used for storage in your home is keeping you from being, I've worked in homes where they had a path like this in between bookcases and filing cabinets or just stuff, right? So they're living in a storage locker, right? So the amount of objects in your home that hold stuff should be appropriate, right, to the kind of life you lead. Now, if you are a person, if there's some reason for you to have a full house of things, there's things that you use, love, or need, then that's a different issue. But it just depends. And what a lot of people do is if they don't feel really comfortable, especially when it comes to things like financial stuff online, pay one bill online. Pick a bill that is the same every month. Because when you have a bill that changes every month, like your credit card or whatever, or even your water bill sometimes, right? You get nervous if it's only online because you might forget to look at it and forget to send a payment or whatever. But if you know that is a $50 charge every month, you can, just as an experiment, I'm going to try to pay this one online and see how you feel about it. And then if you feel good about it, if you decide that you want to digitize some of the work that you have, and you're like, okay, but I can still find it okay. In fact, it's a little easier to find it. Now I have a little more room for this, then that's okay. But it's not about how much stuff can I get rid of. And a lot of people, they come to this because they're so overwhelmed and they feel so defeated. They're just like, I want to get rid of everything. I hear that all the time. I want to get rid of everything. I just want everything out of here. And that's just frustration. Because when it gets right down to it, there are things that are wonderful in your life, that are useful, or that you just love having around you. So, but again, that feeling of being overwhelmed with stuff is a lot. So, give yourself, first of all, be okay with where you are, and then practice with it. See what it feels like. See if you feel like you're missing out anything. But that's everyone's different, right? So no client of mine has ever been the same. No person who's ever tried to get organized is going to look at it the same way. And everybody's definition of being organized is different. Right? Yeah. Question?
Oh, I was just going to say, this is all making me very anxious. Where's the Serenity card?
Yeah. So the Serenity card, right? What is it even mean? That's why I changed the name of my company, the Serene House. And I'll tell you what that means. That was never really a word I used before I became an organizer. I never really thought in those terms. But to me, it means when you wake up in the morning, you know where your clothes are. You know where the stuff, you know where breakfast is. You get up with a feeling of I'm not rushed, I'm not hurried, I'm not in a panic. I don't open up my eyes and go, this place is a disaster. It means that when you open up your kitchen cabinets, you're like, nothing in here is expired. All of these things we like all this stuff. I'm not holding on to 15 cans of the soup that we decided we didn't like that I feel bad throwing it away. When I open up my cosmetic or my jewelry case, I feel like I don't just have a bunch of random broken junk in there. Actually like all my stuff. It doesn't mean that your house always is in order. My Christmas stuff is still up, okay? We had a lot of family stuff going on. We keep our stuff up till the 6th anyway, but in any case, it might be up for another few days, and that's okay. It means that you don't necessarily want people just coming and knocking on your door for a visit, but if your best friend called from down the street and said, I'm going to stop by in 20 minutes for a cup of coffee, you could say, I can get the house pulled together enough in 20 minutes to feel okay with having a friend member, right? But if you live in New York City, nobody ever goes to anybody's house unless you have a big dinner party or something. But a lot of people never see my best friend has not seen my apartment. And we've been friends for 20 years. She's seen some of them, not the apartment I live in now. But that's just because in New York people don't do that, right? But a lot of times people won't let people into their house. Because I have clients who won't start a relationship because they feel so embarrassed by their house. They won't let their kids into their house. They're grown kids. They go to their kid's house, right? So you want that your house is always going to be neat and tidy because it will not be. We live lives. Just like I was saying earlier, you can't just get organized and it's just going to stay that way. Stuff comes in, stuff goes out, stuff breaks. But you feel like I could pull things together in a relative amount of time that I feel comfortable in my space, right? It's just about the feeling that you're not living in a storage locker. because that, and the other thing is, do you have storage lockers? How many people have a storage locker? Right, so out here, it's a little different. In the city, everybody's hand would be out. And almost all the stuff in those storage lockers could have been bought 10 times over for what people are paying to store it, right? And most of the time, it's not the sentimental stuff, it's delayed decisions. It's, these are my parents' things, these are my old clothes, this is old books, and I can't make a decision about it. So I'm gonna put it in the storage locker and pay $400 a month, right? And just forget about it, right? I had clients who, when their parents passed away, they took every single thing in their parents' home, put it in the storage locker, locked the door, and left for 10 years. I mean, just, and then, because they just couldn't deal with it, they just didn't, they didn't know where to start, right? So that's really the idea, is that, in the storage industry, the storage is like the biggest growing industry. If you want to have a business, it's probably going to be very successful going forward. The storage industry is it. Okay, other questions? Well, I think we're going to have time at the end anyway. The prime real estate, I want to talk about that idea again. So we're going to assume that you've done your editing for the most part. Pretty much, let's say you did your clothing, okay, and you feel really good about what you got all your t-shirts. You looked at your t-shirts and said, like I said, this one I'm never going to wear again. It's a backup to a backup. I'm only going to have a backup, right? Some people have 15 things that are the same, and 5 of them don't feel comfortable, but they're just afraid that one day that's the thing they're going to need. If you haven't needed it, you probably never. If you haven't needed it, if it's been a year and you have something that's wearable, think in terms of, is it likely I'm going to wear this, right? And again, so things like big heavy coats and sweaters are kind of hard right now. It was really hard during the pandemic for people to think about their work clothes, right? Because it was like, will I ever wear this again? And when it's time to wear it again, will I even want it, right? So sometimes people just kept those things, and that's okay, because they didn't know. Sometimes I'll work with people who are changing jobs, and they don't know exactly what kind of clothes they're going to need for the new job. So they might keep more than they would like to, but because they just are not sure yet. And that's okay. But prime real estate is this idea that every inch of space in your home, or your office, your desk, your car is valuable and it's costing you money. So it's either costing you mortgage, rent, heating, cooling, insurance. There's a real cost involved. But the other bigger cost, in my opinion, is that nothing else can be in that space, right? So you made a decision to keep 5 cans of soup that nobody in the family is going to eat in a cabinet, and because you've done that, then the cereal that you do eat is going to have to be on the counter, right? Now, it's just a little example, but you make that happens 1,000 times, right? You make trade-off decisions about space without utilizing your space well, right? So start thinking about your space as something really valuable, and that you should be able to live in your space. Activities should be more important than the stuff you're storing, right? That's what we mean by this idea that flat surfaces should be used for activities only, because you should enjoy cooking. Cooking should not be a chore. If you like cooking, then you can have wonderful takeout with beautiful, serve beautiful takeout on platters. But whatever works for you. If you want a hobby, I have people who won't start a hobby because they don't even know where they would put stuff. So we want to think about the stuff you'd like to be doing with your space, and then decide if the things that you currently have in your space are actually helping you with that goal. If your goal is to downsize because you want to move into a smaller apartment in Florida, right, then you need to think in terms of, do we need 3 couches? We're not going to have room for 3 couches, and is keeping these 3 couches going to keep us from making a decision about where to live in Florida, right? So you want to look at the things that might be holding you back. When I lived in Kansas City in a 3-bedroom house all by myself, and I moved to a studio apartment in New York, and I had an estate sale, and got rid of 3/4 of everything I owned. I came to New York and I still had to leave stuff on the curb. If I would have known what a studio apartment was like in New York, I probably wouldn't come. I'm kind of kidding, but what I'm saying is that it was so hard to get rid of all that stuff, right? it was really a big task. It was my very first kind of KonMari by accident thing. But again, I had a goal. I wanted to come to New York. So I kind of, did what I needed to do. So that's kind of the thing we're talking about, especially if you're looking at organizing because you're making a big life-changing decision. So prime real estate. The item is kept where it's used. Okay, so how many people have a junk drawer? Okay, so first thing is you can't call it a junk drawer anymore. It's in everything drawer. And because we're going to put a positive spin on our stuff, right? So in that drawer, that's where you keep things that you use a lot, right? Or that you should keep things that you use a lot, you want to have ready access to, and you want to always know where they are. That means that I want you to look at your everything drawer and see if you have random nuts and bolts, old little flashlight cards, phone cases, schedules or menus or things that are in the everything drawer that are just there because you couldn't make a decision about what to do with it. Or you thought, well, how about this? Find a piece on the floor, like a little plastic piece. Where does this go? I've got to keep this because I must go somewhere. I got to figure out where it goes to. So it's like the cat or something. But keeping all that stuff in the everything drawer is really defeats the purpose of the everything drawer. Like your tape, your scissors, stamps, things that you need, or like your checkbook. Right, you always want to know where your checkbook is. You want to be able to grab it when you need it. Pens at work. Get the home book or your pens. Get rid of the ones that don't work. It's hard, right? But you take a piece of paper and just do this with like all the pens you have. You'll be amazed at how many of them don't work, or they don't work, or they don't feel good in your hand, right? Easy to get out, easy to put away. If things are not easy to put away, you will just set them down, right? So if your closet or your cabinet is so jam-packed that to open it up and try to fit something else in there is just a disaster, then you're not going to put anything in there, right? So the idea is that you can put things away easily, right? If you can put it away easily, if all of this stuff that you're using is on a high shelf, because the lower shelves are full of stuff that you haven't worn for 6 months, you're not going to put it up there. That's the other thing. Prime real estate is also like the shelves and things that are closest to your eyesight, right? So the things, the cabinets that are within easy reach. So appliances that you use once a year, like for example, it was at the holiday, so the waffle maker. A lot of people make waffles maybe 3-4 times a year, maybe only once a year. But whenever they make waffles, they love it. It's like a whole big thing, right? Maybe it's what you do on a holiday morning or something. So the waffle maker brings you a great deal of joy. That if all year you keep it on the counter, where it's taking up a foot of space, right, then it's defeating the purpose. And the things that you do use are stuff where you can't get to them because this is on the counter. So keep the waffle maker, but put it somewhere on the high shelf because you don't need to get to that often. And you'll remember where it is, right, when the time to make waffles is. So that's kind of one way to look at space. And the system for keeping track of things. So during the pandemic, how many of us became Amazon's best friend, trying to buy stuff and buying books? And speaking of storage lockers, I actually have clients who have one client in particular has a storage locker full of paper products that she bought in a panic at the beginning of the pandemic. And she's done that, and there's nothing in there. She's already paid 10 times over for everything in there. But she's just, in her situation, and for a lot of people, they have a really hard time just saying, that was a mistake. And that's why I think putting a positive spin, for her, at that moment, it brought her comfort to feel that she was doing something. Even if it was just buying more paper towels than she could ever possibly use, it felt like she was doing something, and she needed that at that moment. So it's not about making mistakes, it's about trying to learn from the experience. Okay. All right, so here's something that's also super important. One of the things that really can throw people for a loop when they're working in this process is what to do with the stuff you've decided to discard, right? Because we don't want to just, probably valuable stuff. I mean, I've gotten rid of all kinds of things that were definitely expensive and, perfectly good items. I don't want them to just go in the dumpster. The other thing is sometimes when people will have like 2 bags full of stuff that they want to donate, and they drive around in their car with it for like 6 months. Or it sits in the front closet or in the garage. I mean, you never quite get away around to getting rid of it. So you're not done with organizing until the stuff is out of your house. And that doesn't mean your car. But you want to find the right place, right? One of the things that happened during the pandemic is that so many people started organizing their homes that all of the donation places like Goodwill, they couldn't take any more stuff. It was just too overwhelming. And it's still kind of that way. There's more people getting rid of stuff than not. But the sooner you can do this, the better. For anything, I have found there is a place that it can be donated. Some exceptions are things like medical equipment, if it was ordered by a doctor, because there are some exceptions. But those places where if you have old suits or old kind of business wear, like for interviews, right? Old wedding dresses. There's always a place to donate things. A lot of places, libraries won't take books a lot of times, so they only take certain books. On the other hand, there are libraries that will take all your books. The idea is not, you're kind of putting it out into the world and saying, somebody might want this. I'm going to see. I think, is it here where you have a really nice, it's the dump, but they have a place where you can bring things and people buy them. Okay, that is great. All right, and I'm sure I've been there several times with clients, that you take things and it's kind of like a free-for-all. And there's a lot of volunteers who kind of man the tables and make sure things are orderly. But you basically just bring the things, and if somebody says, oh wow, my kids would love to have this to play with, and it's theirs. So it's just kind of making sure that if something can be reused, it is. But again, one of the things that will happen when you realize, when you're looking at the 10 bags of clothing that you're never going to wear and you're ready to donate, it changes the way you shop. It really does. You become much more selective. You're much more likely to spend $100 on an outfit than 4 outfits that are $20 each. You really start thinking in terms of like, what is really gonna fill that whatever thing I'm trying to do. And look at shopping as like a hobby anymore. That doesn't mean you don't go browse around and look to see what's new, but you just don't feel like you need to get something that's gonna fill some void in your life because you feel like your closet looks good, that everything in your closet fits. You feel good about it, even if it's only 10 things. If you have 10 outfits that are perfect, then you're way ahead of most people. And there's nothing wrong with having jeans that don't fit, as long as, I call those aspirational jeans, right? And those are the ones that if you lost 5 or maybe 10 pounds, you'd be able to get in. And maybe you were in them before the holidays, right? So you're going to hang on to them because it's like, it's kind of a goal, right? But if all of your pants are that way, or if your jeans are 20 pounds away, then when you lose that weight, if you lose that weight, go buy yourself new jeans, right? Don't hang on to stuff that's going to make you feel bad, right? If you have old divorce papers, right? When I got divorced years ago, I finally took all the papers because I thought I should keep all of it, and I didn't know what to do with it. This is a quick funny story. I was living by myself in a little apartment, and I didn't even know anything about shredding, right? I didn't know what to do with all this stuff. I just knew that I had to destroy it. So I took this big black trash bag and I filled it with water in the bathtub. And I don't know where I came up with this idea. I let it soak until the paper turned into pulp. And I drained it all, and then I lugged this heavy thing down to the recycling. Now looking back, it was really stupid, but it worked. But getting rid of all that paper, I have a client who, both her parents passed away. She was very, very close to her parents. They were both cremated. And she talked a lot about her parents and what a big influence they were in her life. So we were doing her closet, and there were 2 big boxes in her closet. This was the client who was really wanting to get into a relationship, but she couldn't have anybody in her home. She really couldn't have anybody in her life. There was no space. So we're in a closet. I'm up on a shelf. I'm up on a ladder. And there's 2 big boxes in her bedroom closet. And I bring them down and I say, oh, what's this? And she says, that's my parents. And I was like, okay, you cannot have your deceased parents in your bedroom if you're hoping for a relationship. Right? That energy is just not good. So that was one of the things we were like, we're gonna, she eventually did let go of those ashes and let them off somewhere that was important to her. But that was really interesting, is that it made perfect sense to her to keep her parents in her bedroom. But also, I really, as honest as I can be, I can't think of a single client who genuinely regretted letting go of something. I don't have it here, but I have a picture of the pile of stuff on my bed that I got rid of. And I look at that stuff and I'm like, I don't even remember any. I didn't remember owning some of this stuff. So that means you're still gonna be very careful. I don't want you to regret getting rid of stuff. And if you approach this with, I'm gonna get rid of everything in my life because I just can't deal with it anymore, then you might set yourself up to regret getting rid of things. So I want you to think about things in a conscious, thoughtful way, but also a realistic way about what do you want your, we live in the present and we're looking toward the future. We don't live in the past. So you want to think in terms of what is working for me right now and what is going to help me be the person I want to be tomorrow, right? So if those things fit into that, then great. But if it's a watercolor paint set that you thought you might want to do and you've never touched it and you just feel bad looking at it, then let it go. Somebody else might be very happy to have that. But that's, getting rid of stuff is really hard. Donate when you can. Be okay if things end up in the dumpster. It's going to happen. Recycle what you can. Sell, consign. Be very careful with this. I'm trying this on I told my mother-in-law I'd sell her Barbies on eBay. And I'm getting rid of some of that, but it is a lot of work for very little money. If you try to sell stuff, it's fine to try to sell it, but don't get too caught up. You can spend so much time listing something, taking pictures of it, answering questions, and you have to pack it up, ship it, all that stuff. Or even if you do it locally, then you have to deal with people not, yes, I want that dresser. They don't show up, and then you wait all day for them. So this is, make sure that whatever time you want to spend in getting rid of something, with the end result being that you're getting paid, that it's worth whatever it is. Consigning is a great thing. If you have anything valuable, especially like handbags or jewelry, the Real Real is a good resource. Even little consignment shops. Consignment is a good thing. You don't get very much money for it, but you get something. It's going to end up in, somebody's going to want it, and you don't feel like you just let it go. Okay. Questions about that? Anybody have anything in particular that they're having a hard time getting rid of?
I wanted to make sure I got the two things you wanted us to have as a takeaway. Number one, what is the future use of this item?
Right.
And what was number two? Was it about
So we haven't gotten to that part yet. Okay. So, but that's it. So basically, it's what is the future use of this item? And is this? I'll tell you what the next one is. This worth the amount of space it's taking up? Okay. So one of them is an editing question, and the second one is an organization question. Right. So even with all the stuff you decided to keep, you're still going to be thinking, where's it going to go? Right? Because it's edit and then organize. Okay. Huh?
I have a question, I guess, your
Sure.
advice maybe kind of on the relationship thing. Of like, I've read the book, I've watched the shows, I aspire to be Zen Buddhist minimalist. I don't like messy and love books. Amy, my fiance, is super clean minimalist. Like, any advice to like make some more harmony of like, common area is super clean, but I love my books and I want her to be happy more than I care about books.
Right. Okay.
But I'm also like a little bit sloppy.
Okay. So this is the part where you both negotiate. First of all, everything you're saying to me is like really a good sign that regardless and in spite of the differences in the way you approach things, you're going to be able to work this out, right? Because most people get really defensive if they are where you are. Like, I'm not going to, that's my stuff or whatever, but you're very open to coming up to a solution. And to you, you've already said, the solution, having a solution here is far more important to me than keeping all that stuff. That's what it comes down to. It's not going to come to that. And so then you have to look at each part of your home individually and say, first, you have to decide, is this a common area or not? Right? So you may have differences have opinions about that. Are the bathroom counters, is that a common area? Right, so then that's part of the discussion. And then you have to look at the things that are important to you as far as the books. Let's say the books are really important to you. So negotiating an amount of space that you can both live with, that honors your need to have books, and then honors your fiance's who feel like she wants to have a house that got some area space to it. Then come up, try to figure out what that number is. And if at times you exceed that number, then maybe it's time to go look at the books again. So it kind of, it kind of depends, but it's all, obviously it's a negotiation and it has to be open. And you're already telling me what I'm hearing is that I'm open to a solution. So I think, it's just talk, you'll figure it out. Okay,
Just in terms of where to bring stuff,
the what?
where to bring stuff,
Yeah.
how to get rid of stuff. So I'm actually part of the waste-free Greenwich group.
Oh, great,
So,
great.
I mean, composting is one thing, food waste is a big thing, but it's also about stuff, getting rid of stuff. So, just a couple suggestions, electronics can go to the dump, there's a special place at Holly Hill, across from where like leaves and all that stuff goes, but you can also bring electronics to Staples and actually get store credit for that. So if you have an old printer or something like that, you can bring it to Staples, one item per month, and get a $5 credit. And then textiles, I know is another thing that people try and get rid of. If you have a shirt that's stained or towels in that. We actually have textile collections at various points through town. So if you go, I can just tell you there's one at Holly Hill, there's actually a textile place. And then also at Arch Street in front of the Teen Center, in front of the Cobb Library. Yeah, and there's another one, I can't remember where the other one is, but if you go either to the Waste Free Greenwich website, or there's something called the Waste Wizard, which you can access through the Waste Free Greenwich website or through the town website. And if you list certain things in there, it will tell you where you can go with it. If somebody's saying something about clothing, it can tell you some local places where you can bring things.
I think you have a lot of resources, and I'm glad you mentioned about the textiles, because one of the things that is important to know about places like Goodwill and Salvation Army, they actually sell such a tiny percentage of the stuff they get. I mean, it's tiny, like maybe 10%. The rest of it gets bundled up and sent over to countries where there's a need for clothes. Then what happens to, like, if you have things like, don't put underwear or dirty, trashy things, then the Goodwill bin, right? I get it, you just kind of like, I just want it out of here. But if you put it in like the textile recycling, that stuff gets shredded up and they use it for like insulation in homes or in those parts of the world where they need that kind of thing in order to build homes. So there is usefulness to everything. It's just trying to, get it to the right place. That sounds really helpful.
What about hard drive recycling? Like, I don't want to give my old computer because it's got all this information. So what do you, my husband once took a hammer to one of our computers before we brought it to recycling, but I don't know what to do with that, old phones and things like that. That's all your information.
Well, that's why, if it's an Apple product, well, take it to Apple, because they can replace everything. Okay. And then they will recycle it for you. If it's another kind of product, then Best Buy, a lot of times they can, it actually works fine to just smash it with a hammer. But the thing is that there are people who want those things for parts, right? So a lot of times if you take it to a place where they recycle, the idea is that once they delete all the information, then it's going to be used somewhere, somehow.
I didn't realize that was a procedure that they did.
Yeah, I'm not, that's what I've always
Thank you.
done. But again, you gotta feel comfortable. That's a lot of people have a really hard time with. One of the things that keeps people from filling out mail is their addresses on it, and they're worried about getting their identity stolen. And you have to do what is comfortable to you. The thing is that if somebody wants to get your information, they're not gonna go through your trash. You can find it online so easily. So if it's your credit card bill or something, but even your credit card bill doesn't have that, it doesn't have your phone number on it. But you do what makes you feel comfortable. If you want to write out, they've got little stamps where you can like make your address not readable. You can get that on Amazon. But I'm just saying that if people want to get your information, they're just not going to get your trash. It's so much easier to get it another way. But again, you've got to do it, feel comfortable. But a lot of people will not throw anything away because they just can't decide if that's okay or not. It's hard, I know it's hard. Other questions? Okay, let's go ahead and go 2 more slides here. Oh, goodness. Okay, have a goal and a vision. What do you want to change in order to get closer to your ideal life? Right? Okay, so again, we're thinking of, we want to downsize. We want to turn the kids' room into a hobby room. We want to feel like we can do what we want to on the weekend without feeling like we should be home cleaning stuff. How many people decide they're going to get organized on a Saturday? They get so overwhelmed, they end up sitting in front of the TV, you know, like a zombie, because they just can't. This is too overwhelming. But this is all about what is going to make you feel better going forward. Plan your work, 5 categories, 2 steps, right? But the categories are fluid, right? The most important one is just remember the sentimental stuff you should do last. But you want to try to do things by categories. The 2 steps, edit and then organize. And then the mantra is, what is the future use of this object? And is this item worth the amount of space that it occupies? Okay, so here's what I suggest. 3 to 5 hour blocks of time, no more, right? What I find is that it takes about 3 hours to really feel like you've made a difference in your stuff. And you gotta feel some sense of accomplishment, right? After 5 hours, you get too tired. And you'll find that you start keeping everything because your decision-making brain is just shutting down. So no matter what, do not say, I'm gonna get the whole house organized this weekend. All right, it's 3 to 5 hours at a time. And if 3 hours is too much, if you don't have time or the energy or whatever to do 3 hours, then just say, I'll do it for an hour. Remember also that getting rid of, you have a pile of 20 sweaters, you get rid of 10 of them. You can see, wow, that made a huge difference, right? I have half the amount of space of sweaters than I did. If you have 20 pieces of paper and you get rid of half of them, it doesn't feel like you did anything. But you may have had to make more decisions about those 10 pieces of paper than you did those sweaters. So even though you want to see accomplishment, think in terms of what you're getting out of that decision-making process, right? So it's okay if you don't feel like every single time you organize, you've made a huge accomplishment, right? A little bit at a time. Don't do it in a moment of high stress, because a lot of times we're like, oh, you know, gotta get the house straightened out because people are coming or whatever it is. Don't do it when you have a lot of work going on. If you've got big, you know, taking care of elderly parents or whatever, or your kids have a lot of things that they need you to be involved in at this point, wait. There will come a time when you have a little bit more leeway and you're not feeling overwhelmed. Make it something you're doing because you're relaxed, and that you feel like you can give yourself the time, you can schedule it. And if you're not looking forward to it, you're at least looking forward to the outcome, right? And then, again, do not buy bins or containers until you're done. You will probably find you have everything you need. If you are like most people, and you've been to the container store a time or two, you probably already have plenty of big bins. But if you don't, at the end, you can say, I'm going to go to the container store, all my beautiful things that I've decided I'm keeping, I'm going to make them as organized and as beautiful as possible. And that's perfectly fine. But don't do that until you've gotten things organized. Okay. So one more thing I wanted to give you, this is a tip sheet. And again, I may have to, I'm not sure if I have enough copies, may have to send out some copies via email. But this is called Does It Spark Joy? And this is just some little tips. Not all of them are really combat approved by any stretch. And I want you to just take a look at some of these and see if some of these resonate with you. And again, I'll give more copies out to you. Yes, that's a great way. So just as suggested is that sometimes people aren't sure what looks good on them. It's okay to ask. If you have a friend that will tell you that looks terrible on you, then have that friend come help you. Have that friend come help you with your maybe pile. Remember I said you're gonna have a big maybe pile? Those are the things that maybe you need to try on. So if you have a friend or a relative, like your sister will tell you, if your spouse, with caution, I know how I feel when my husband tells me how something with them, I would much rather hear it from a friend. So depending on what works for you, if you feel like having somebody to bounce it off is helpful, then do that. 90 days, sometimes like the 90-day rule, especially at the end of the season. So the end of the season is a really good time. Like this is like spring cleaning, and this is a great time. Like when you decide I'm gonna really do a good go over of the house, I'm gonna paint this room or paint that. This is a great time because you'll be moving things away anyway. To take a look at some of the stuff you have. One tip for the maybe someday items is called the 20/20 rule. I have it here. All right, here's another rule. The 20/20 rule. If something is a maybe someday item, and you could get it again in 20 minutes or less, for $20 or less, it's okay to let that thing go. In other words, if you have, let's say, a particular tool for something, and you may need it again someday, but you can get it on Amazon again in 2 seconds and it costs $3, then it's okay to let that go. Now, your parameters may be different. You may say, if something's $20, I'm keeping it. Maybe $5, maybe it's $50. But what I mean by 20 minutes is I can pick this up at CVS. I could get this from Amazon. It's an easily obtained item, right? So if I let this one go, it's okay because if I need it again, I can get it again. You can even apply the book. So if you have a book that you read one chapter of, and you're not sure if you like it, but you feel bad getting rid of it, it's okay to say, I'm going to donate this book because if I decide next summer that I really wanted to finish that book, I can get it very easily. Okay, so that's just one other tip that's not on here, but see if some of these resonate for you when it comes to things that are difficult to make decisions about. Okay. Any final questions? Thank you all so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.